units that don't still fly, and they don't want them. Why do we continue to do that? Hurt a little bit, and that little bit would make a little bit more. Why don't we do something like that?
Well, I would tell you that the F-35 is a plane that the military does want. And they want it, and it's been being built and designed and gone forward, and it's out there. But here's the point. The point is, our defense budget is the whole defense budget. If you cut out the entire defense budget, that would be 1/6 of our whole budget. So we spend $3.6 trillion. If you cut out the entire defense budget, did nothing to defend this country, no military, everyone went home, shut down the Pentagon, it would save 1/6 of the amount of money that we have. That's all. It's 1/2 of 1/3 of the discretionary spending. So it's not a problem. However, there's been major cuts of around $400 billion over the next 10 years made. Most of the advisors say that's tough, but they're going to get there and they're going to do that. So they're being squeezed for sure. And there is some potential savings in ending the war. But it's not where all the savings is going to have to come from. It's one, like I said, a smaller portion. Yes.
This is from the OMB and CBO, it's read, pretty well recognized as experts. What is the obstacle to keep most people in this country from understanding what you just said to us? 2030 is the big year, according to this read. Total disaster if we don't do something. Most of us here probably understand that. We live a full life, we understand budgets and things like that. But why don't more people understand this?
Well, I think you have to realize that it's far easier to keep the status quo. I mean, you've watched the federal government, and the status quo is the easiest to keep. It's the easiest to get elected by. It's just maintain where we are. Don't hurt anybody. So anyway, I'm just saying that's the other is here's a group, and I'm explaining what I believe is right. You can see this, and you can make your own opinion. But the point is, we probably don't have enough people either interested or listening to this explanation. And so it is hard to get out because changing from the direction we're going is difficult. It is, because then when you work it down into a particular program, and then even a smaller program. So there was a move to make flexible to the states the building of sound barriers, sidewalks, other things in transportation. And the people, even though they were still allowable projects, it would have allowed the states some flexibility to determine which one they needed for the local community. Even that, there was a huge upheaval over just doing that. It didn't even eliminate the program. All it did was say it would become one of the options in this pot of money as opposed to the option. And when you do that, the people that love this or that or the other rise up, and they a lot of times kill those ideas. So that's one. Second is it's easy to keep the status quo. Third is this is difficult information to get out. You can't explain it in 10 seconds. Far easier to say is just don't cut this program. That's easy. That's a one-liner, and you can say it and everything's great. Yes?
It seems to me if you could educate the people that when they allow this curve to go up like that, the standard of living is going to go down because the federal government just prints more money to pay for it, and then the value of the dollar goes down, but that seems to go in one ear and out the other ear.
Well, I will tell you that this is getting the attention. It is. Like I said, when Representative Van Hollen, who's the ranking Democrat member, and Paul Ryan, the ranking Republican member, both agreed that something has got to be done. That's the first time I have ever heard a yes to that answer by both sides. So to me, that gave me hope. I also asked there's two-thirds of the budget that's not part of the budget. Two-thirds of our appropriations not part of the budget. That's everything from SNAP to food subsidies, to Medicare, Medicaid, VA benefits, all of those things. And I asked both of them, did they believe there needed to be a change there? And for the first time ever, they both answered in the affirmative, yes. So are we getting the message out? I don't know, it's slow, but at least two leaders in Congress that do the budget on both sides, both disagreeing with each other, and if you ever see them on some TV program match, they'll be disagreeing with every word the other one says. But they did agree that this is a problem, and they did agree that there has to be some change across the board. So maybe a little bit of that's happening, yes.
First comment, I'm very skeptical that the Senate's going to actually propose a budget. I mean, not in an election year. And be able to negotiate something before the fall recess. So your optimism is great, but I just don't see it happening, to be honest with you. But the other problem, and to answer his question, when you described this graph to us, you said this is the path reducing spending. It's not the path of reducing spending, if I understand it correctly. It is the path of reducing the percent of GDP. The budget that Ryan's proposing does not reduce the total dollar value that we're spending. Is that correct?
It reduces, right, the percentage of.
So here, the first thing that
But it is,
the fact that
there's
you're
so,
reducing the
well, let me
budget.
explain this, and I don't get into that because there's so many baselines. There's a baseline that started here, and there were 6 different baselines, and it is confusing. I have begged for them to just adopt one baseline, but there's a presidential baseline, so his number, and in that it does reduce spending. So that's the number everybody uses, is what the president proposed, and then what the Congress proposes, either the House or Senate, is judged off of that. So in a sense, yes, this is reducing spending over what's being proposed by the president. But this is a picture of the amount, the percentage of the gross domestic product, but in doing that, in the first years, it's going to actually reduce some
But if
spending.
you were to explain to the American people that we are going to spend no less this year than we did last year, we're just cutting the rate of growth, then it becomes more palatable. What happens is you get into that argument of we're reducing what the president says, so the average person doesn't understand when you're saying we're not really cutting anything, we're just slowing the rate of growth. And they think, okay, they're cutting my Medicare, they're cutting my VA benefits, whatever. The average citizen who doesn't have time to look at graphs.
Yes, well, let me say that since you brought that up. To get on this path, there's no change necessary in Medicaid or Medicare or Social Security for 10 years. And anyone during that 10-year period of time, including those that are already on Social Security and Medicare, will see no changes whatsoever for their lifetime. Only those.
An increase every year?
It will operate just the way it is. The Social Security Administration has a formula, they project COLAs, all that thing. Everything would operate just the way it's operating. Social Security and Medicare. For those that would enroll in 2023, there would be a change. They could either pick a fee-for-service, which is the Medicare plan, or they could choose another plan. Just know this, that the president's budget and the Paul Ryan budget spend the exact same amount on Medicare. There are reductions in both in the out years. The president's reductions come from the Independent Payment Advisory Board, which is in his health care bill. There are 15 non-elected bureaucrats which will determine what kind of services you'll get under Medicare. So they get savings from that because they reduce the amount of care in that they ration care. That's one way to save money. Or the Ryan budget gives you choices on a fee-for-service or another type plan like the members of Congress have, and it's subsidized and you pay a certain amount of that. You still